Hello, my name is Jim McGillivray and welcome to the Pipe Box, your source for all things piping. If you find this video useful, please give it a like and please subscribe to this YouTube channel to see more videos just like this. I'm going to give you some exercises today, and you can print out a sheet of these exercises by going back to the description of this video on my YouTube channel. You will see a link to a PDF in there. Today I would like to talk to you about the C doubling. There's a good case that could be made that the C doubling is our most common piece of complex technique. Here you will see two bars of music. The first bar shows the C doubling broken down into quarter notes. A G grace note on C, followed by a D grace note on C. That is our C doubling. The second bar shows what the C doubling looks like out in the wild. This is exactly the way a C doubling appears in our music. The two arrows denote where the beat falls in a C doubling. Every doubling has to be placed precisely on a beat, and it's important that we know that the G grace note is where the beat falls. When the G grace note finger hits the chanter, the foot hits the floor. That's the case in all of our doublings, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. The second point I want to make about C doublings here is that the two grace notes need to be well separated. Pipers often tend to play the two grace notes almost at the same time, and they end up on top of one another, and we don't hear that clear, precise separation that's required in a C doubling. Again, I want to stress the importance of the G grace note in the C doubling, and the next exercise is going to make great use of the G grace note. You're going to get a chance to practice just changing from one note to another with the G grace note, and then you're going to get to do it again with the doubling. Let's hear exercise 1. In this exercise, we start with a rhythmical and accurate G grace note going from low G up to C. I want to describe what it means to play a grace note accurately on a note. And playing a grace note accurately on a note is different going up from going down. Going up, if I want to play a G grace note going from low G to C, I lift the C fingers and the high G finger at the same time, and then the G grace note finger comes down. Up at the same time, G grace note finger down. So that's the crucial part of going up. Fingers come up at the same time. If I'm playing a G grace note going down from D to C, now fingers are going to hit the chanter at the same time. So the G finger is going to lift, and then the D finger and the G finger are coming down at the same time. So that's what it means to play a G grace note accurately on the note, either going up or going down from one note to another. When I say we play the grace note rhythmically, what I mean is, as we're beating our foot through the exercise, there are 2 beats in each bar, and the beat falls squarely on the G grace note, both the G grace note when it's alone and the G grace note when there is a doubling. So make sure your G grace note finger hits the chanter when your foot hits the floor. Make sure, whether you're playing just the grace note or the doubling, that you make the G grace note the same way both times. Don't change your G grace note just because there's a doubling happening. After you play that G grace note, you're going to play a D grace note. And the important thing is here to leave a space between the G and the D grace note. Some pipers tend to run those two grace notes together like this. You need the grace notes to happen separately and precisely and clearly, like this. One other point to make, you may have noticed that when I played the doubling from high G, I used a high A finger, the thumb grace note. You can't use a high G grace note when you're already on high G, so we use the next closest grace note, which is the high A. The principle still applies. The finger lifts and other fingers hit the chanter at the same time. So again, the first grace note is paramount. I want you to listen to the first exercise I played once more, and I'd like you to pay particular attention to the uniformity of the G grace note, the separation between the G and the D grace note, and exactly where the beat is falling in the exercise. Here's exercise 1 again. That exercise gives you a fairly simple context in which to play a C doubling, in that the C doubling is coming off of a fairly lengthy note and you get a chance to think about it. In reality, our doublings often come off of short notes. For example, let's take the first bar of Scotland the Brave. We have a C doubling coming off of a very short B. And that's quite different from having time to set up and think about it. What I want to play for you now is an exercise that is exactly the same as the first exercise we did, except it has a short note before the G grace note and before the doubling. Let's have a listen and then we'll talk about it. Everything we talked about in exercise 1 still applies. The G grace note needs to be accurate, it needs to be on the beat, and there needs to be space between the G and the D grace note. If you find this exercise difficult, You may need to be a little bit more patient with exercise 1 until you're totally comfortable with playing C doublings while you're changing notes. Exercise 2 can wait. One other point I wanted to make about the C doubling is sometimes in an effort to make the doubling nice and open, some pipers will make it too open and they will separate the G and the D grace notes so much that they kind of cease to become a doubling and are just a G and a D grace note on C. That's a little bit too big. Again, make sure the G grace note feels the same in this exercise whether you're playing a doubling or just the G grace note. This is an important exercise and I'd like you to listen to it one more time before we move on to our final exercise. I have one more exercise to give you. This is what I call a tune simulation. In other words, it's an exercise for C doublings that's set up pretty much like a tune. It doesn't have the greatest melody in the world, but it basically practices C doublings in the context of a 2/4 march with very short notes before the doublings. Let's have a listen to the tune simulation C doubling exercise. I'm a great believer that to improve or learn pieces of technique, we need some very basic and simple exercises. Often the simpler the better. But to really tweak and perfect our technique, we need to play it in tune situations, thus the tune simulation. Again, you want your G grace note to be accurate and on the beat, and you want your C doubling to be clear and separated. I want to talk one more time about the importance of putting the G grace note on the beat. If I take a tune like Scotland the Brave with its C doublings in the first part and play with the wrong grace note on the beat, you'll hear how the tune is bent out of shape. Here are a couple of bars of Scotland the Brave with the D grace note in the C doubling put on the beat. As opposed to the C doubling on the beat like this. There are more tune simulations in my Rhythmic Fingerwork Technical Tutor, which you can obtain either from myself or from your local dealers. That's about everything I know on C doublings. Good luck with your C doublings. Remember, never play faster than your technical capabilities. The first thing you do when you're having trouble with some technique is you slow it down. For me, Jim McGillivray at the Pipe Box, good piping.